This is the recording for topic 14-7, solving quadratics using the quadratic formula. Today you will need a calculator, but before we get started, let's do the bell work problem. You need to solve by factoring. This is what we've been doing for the past couple of days, so this is just a reminder how you can solve quadratics by using factoring. First thing we need to do is make sure that our equation is in standard form and that it's set equal to 0, so that means we need to move the 15 to the other side. That means we'll do subtracting 15, and whatever you do from one side, you do to the other, because 15 minus 15 on the right will now give us equal to 0. On the left, we'll get x squared plus 2x minus 15. So now we need to factor completely, because we have now it in standard form. So to factor completely, we follow the 4 steps. Let's see if there's GCF. I look in front of my x squared, and there's not a number there, so there is no GCF. Second thing we need to do is find the sum and the product. The sum is the middle term, or the number in front of the x, so that's 2. Our product will multiply the coefficient of x squared, which is 1, times our last, or constant is negative 15, gives us a product of negative 15. Next, we need to find what two numbers will multiply to give you negative 15, but add to give you a positive 2. The two numbers are 5 and negative 3. 5 times the negative 3 is negative 15. 5 plus the negative 3 is a positive 2. Last, we'll rewrite it in factored form, so we're using our parentheses. We'll get x and plug in our factors. So positive 5 would be plus 5, negative 3 would be minus 3. This is now equal to 0. We have factored completely. Our next step is to take each one of those factors and set it equal to 0. So we're going to do x plus 5, set it equal to 0, and x minus 3, set it equal to 0. Our last step is to solve. So we're going to solve for x. Get the x by itself, we have to subtract 5 from both sides. That'll give us x equals a negative 5, because 0 minus 5 is a negative 5. And then plus 5 minus 5 is negative 5. I'm sorry, it's 0, so that gets the x by itself. Our second factor, we're going to add 3 to both sides. Get that calculator out of the way. If I add 3 to both sides, then I have a negative 3 plus 3. That'll get rid of that 0, so that gets x. And then 0 plus 3 is 3. So my answer when I solve, or my two solutions, is x is equal to negative 5, or it's equal to positive 3. Some of you may have noticed the pattern. It's just the opposite of the number that's inside the parentheses. And that makes sense, because if I put a negative 5 here, it does come out to be 0. If I put a positive 3 here, it does come out to be 0. Here are the answers to assignment 14-6. Pause the video if you need to check your work, or to check your answers, I'm sorry. Our notes today. We've been solving by factoring, but how would you solve a quadratic equation if it cannot be factored? There are some quadratic equations that just cannot factor, and so what would you do? The alternative way is to solve by using the quadratic formula. So notice it says if you are given your quadratic equation in standard form that it's equal to 0, same thing that we've been doing in the past. So if you have it's equal to 0 and you cannot factor it, then we can use this formula. It says your x can be equal to, this is negative b. I like to think it's the opposite of whatever b was, plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So if we're going to use this formula, the first thing we need to do is to find our ABCs. Okay, so actually we're going to do, make sure it is set equal to 0, just like we did before. The second step, we're going to find our ABCs. That means find what's the number in front of the x squared, what's the number in front of the b, what's the number in front of the c. And then the last thing, we're going to use the quadratic equation, or use the quadratic formula, and solve. Now notice in the past we've had two different answers, and in this case we're going to end up with two different answers also, and we get those two answers because of this plus or minus. I will explain it as we do our first problem. So let's look at problem number one. We're going to use the quadratic formula in order to solve. Now this is a problem in which, notice, actually it's the same problem that we just got through with, I believe, on our bill work. And I'm just going to use the quadratic formula to show that, yes, you can use it even when you can factor it, but we are basically going to be using this when we cannot factor. All right, so the number in front of the x, we got to find our ABCs. That's a 1. So if you need to, you can rewrite the standard form right above it so that'll help you pick out what your ABCs are. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, it's the number in front of the x, and C is a negative 15. So if there is, you take the sign in front of it always. First we found our ABCs. Next we're going to use the formula. So you will hear me singing often because when I learned this before and it didn't have a formula chart that gave us the formula, we had to teach our students how to memorize, and we used the song x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So as I plug in, you will hear me singing that. So don't get too discouraged. All right, so we have x equals the opposite of b. My b was a positive 2, so the opposite is going to be a negative 2. Plus or minus the square root. Notice I make a big square root sign of b squared. So b squared is 2. 2 squared minus 4 times a is 1 times c is a negative 15 all over 2a. So notice how I stretch the all because this line goes over every single thing. That tells you everything that's on top. You need to make sure it stays on top. Here's where the calculator comes in handy. I'm going to do the negative 2 plus or minus all over. I know 2 times 1 is 2, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And then I'm going to do the square root. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So I need to figure out what is the number underneath the radical. I don't want to put the radical in, just to find the number that's underneath it. So when you put this in the calculator, all you're going to do is type in what's underneath it. Do not type the radical in itself. So start off with parentheses because I substituted. So parentheses is squared. That's 2 squared minus 4 parenthesis 1. Close it off. Open parenthesis negative 15. And then close it off. We're going to press enter. This is everything that's underneath the parenthesis. And we see that that number is 64. Now that I have simplified it to a number, now I'm going to see, can I take the square root of 64? So I'll do square root 64, press enter. In this case, I can. It comes out to be 8. Let's try that again. So now, I told you that we do have two solutions because of this plus or minus. Well, actually from this point on, you could actually leave it like this. However, because I don't have the radical anymore, you will be able to simplify. So I'm going to separate this into two different possibilities, one with the plus, the other with the minus. So we have negative 2 plus 8, all that's over 2. That's one of them. Or x can be equal to negative 2 minus 8 over 2. So when we have these fractions, we need to simplify. Think of it as two problems. Let's do the top first. We'll do negative 2 plus 8, get a number that's 6. So 6 divided by 2, and then 6 divided by 2 equals to 3. Then we'll do the other one. We have a negative 2 minus 8. That's the top. We're taking care of the top first. That's a negative 10. So this is negative 10 divided by 2. Negative 10 divided by 2 is a negative 5. So our answer is x equals 3 or x equals negative 5. Notice this is the same answer we got with our bell work problem. So this goes to show you that the quadratic formula works every single time. Whereas factoring doesn't always work because sometimes you cannot factor. But you can always use the quadratic formula to come up with your answer. I think it has a little bit more steps and I can factor a lot quicker. But for some of you, this is an alternative. Now let's use some problems that you actually cannot factor. The first one that we're doing is negative 2x squared minus 4x plus 3. Notice it's already in standard form. This is great because now we can find our ABCs. So A is equal to negative 2, B is negative 4, C is a positive 3. It's important that you show that one little step because if you don't choose your ABCs correctly, quadratic formula is not going to work for you. So now let's plug in what we have. We have x equals the opposite of b. We start off with negative 4. Opposite of negative 4 is a positive 4. Plus or minus the square root, making it big so I can put things underneath. B squared, notice I'm putting in parentheses because I'm substituting, and it's a negative 4 that's squared, minus 4 times a. A is negative 2. C is a positive 3. All over 2a, so 2 times a negative 2. We'll do 4 plus or minus. We got to figure out what's in the radical. 2 times a negative 2, that's negative 4 in our denominator. So let's figure out what's in the radical. Notice I used parentheses when I did my substitution. That's important, especially when we have negative numbers being substituted in. So I have negative 4, hit the squared button, minus, parenthesis, nope, let's try, minus 4. Now the parenthesis, negative 2, close it off, open parenthesis, 3, close it off, press enter. We get 40. So now I'll check, can I take the square root of 40? And then notice what happens when I take the square root of 40. I get a decimal, so this tells me I am done. My answer I may leave like this, or you may see it separated because it does represent two answers. One of them is 4 plus the square root of 40 over negative 4. The other is 4 minus the square root of 40 over negative 4. So that's how you see there's two possible answers. And again, that's where that plus or minus comes from. It represents two possible answers. Let's look at our next problem. We have 6x squared minus 3x minus 7 is equal to 0. Again, it's already in standard form, so let's find our ABCs. A is equal to 6, B is equal to negative 3, C is equal to negative 7. If we don't give you the little blanks, you should write it out, or at the very least, label it on your equation that's given. So now let's solve for x. X equals the opposite of b. Opposite of negative 3 is a positive 3. Plus or minus the square root, make a big old house, of b squared. So I would do a negative 3 in parentheses, squared, minus 4ac. So 4 times a is 6, times c is negative 7, all over 2a. So 2, and then our a is a 6. Now let's find out what is under that radical. 2 times 6 at the bottom gives us 12. We'll type in what's underneath the radical. Again, making sure we use our parentheses. So negative 3 in parentheses, squared, minus 4 times a is 6, that 6 is in parentheses, and then our c is in parentheses, that's a negative 7. Press enter, we get 177. I'll see, can I take the square root of 177 and not get a decimal? And I guarantee you can't. We're going to get a decimal 13.3. So no, I'm just going to leave it as is. I am done. All the problems that we've chosen to represent the quadratic formula, they should not be able to take the square root and get a nice number. Because if you could take the square root and get a nice number, that means you can factor it, and we expect you to be able to factor. So we get x equals 3 plus the square root of 177 over 12, that entire thing. Make sure your line goes all the way over. Or we have 3 minus the square root of 177. All of that is over 12. You have your two solutions. So the last thing is our summary. What is the quadratic formula and how do we use it? You have one way of doing it as far as that x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Those of you using Edmodo, you will also see a link to another video. In this video, you will see two of our math teachers are singing another version of a way to remember the quadratic formula. It is sung to Adele's song or the Adele melody. Can't remember the name of it. We should have had it all. That's what it is, except this is quadratic formula. So if you'd like to hear an alternative, you may listen to that video. When you do your assignment, first thing you should do is write what the quadratic formula is. On your test, this will be given to you. But x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This concludes topic 14-7.